Have you ever poured your heart and soul into something, only to have it ripped away in an instant? 12 years of my life vanished with the click of a keyboard. My business partner, my friend, the guy who stood beside me as we built our company, from nothing, locked me out of our systems with a simple text message. I don't need you anymore. No warning, no discussion, just digital exile. Everything we'd built together, gone in seconds. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was Monday's meeting, the one where I'd discover exactly how deep betrayal can cut and just how sweet redemption can taste. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The morning started like any other. September in Seattle, and the rain tapped gently against my bedroom window as I reached for my phone to silence the alarm. I had 3 missed calls from Eric and a text that simply read, "Call me ASAP." Eric Mitchell and I had been friends since college. We'd met during freshman orientation at Washington State, both of us nervous engineering students with big dreams. While everyone else was partying, we were huddled in our dorm room dreaming up the next big tech innovation. By senior year, Cloud Secure was born, our cybersecurity startup that promised to revolutionize how small businesses protected their data. For 12 years, we'd been inseparable. Business partners, best friends. We'd weathered the early lean years when we couldn't afford office space and worked out of my garage. We celebrated our first major client with cheap champagne on my rooftop. When Eric's mom died 3 years ago, I was the one who flew with him back to his hometown in Ohio and helped arrange the funeral. So when I saw his text that morning, my first thought was concern, not suspicion. I called him back immediately. "Eric? Everything okay?" I asked, my voice still rough with sleep. The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. "Alex, we need to talk," he finally said, his voice unnaturally formal. "I've been thinking about the direction of the company." Something in his tone made me sit upright, suddenly wide awake. "What about it?" "I think it's time we went our separate ways." The words hung between us, impossible and surreal. "What are you talking about? Cloud Secure is our baby. We built this together." "Things change, Alex. The company needs to evolve and, frankly, your vision isn't aligning with where we need to go." I tried to process what I was hearing. Just last week, we had dinner at my place, grilling steaks and discussing our 5-year plan. There had been no hint of dissatisfaction, no warning signs. "Can we at least meet and discuss this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've already spoken with the board. They agree with my assessment." The board. Our board consisted of 3 people: Eric, myself, and Sarah Winters, our angel investor who had come on board in year 3. Sarah and I had always gotten along well, so his implication that she had sided with him seemed impossible. "You went behind my back to Sarah?" The betrayal cut deep. "It wasn't like that," Eric said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Look, check your email. The separation agreement is there. It's a fair offer." Before I could respond, he continued, "And Alex? Don't try logging into the systems. Your access has been revoked." The call ended, and I sat there in stunned silence, rain still pattering against the window. 12 years of friendship and partnership ended in a 3-minute phone call. With shaking hands, I reached for my laptop and tried to log into our company server. Access denied. Then our project management software, locked out. Our financial platform, no access. The email from Eric arrived exactly as promised. The fair offer was anything but a buyout at a fraction of what my shares were worth, with a non-compete clause that would prevent me from working in cybersecurity for 5 years. I spent the weekend in a daze, alternating between rage and disbelief. I tried calling Sarah multiple times, but my calls went straight to voicemail. Eric wasn't responding to texts or emails. It was as if a wall had suddenly been erected between me and everything I had spent my adult life building. By Monday morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going down without a fight. I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, the one I reserved for important client meetings. I drove to our office in downtown Seattle, the 15-story glass building where we occupied the entire 10th floor. Our logo, a shield with a digital lock, gleamed above the reception desk. The receptionist, Tina, looked up in surprise as I approached. Her eyes darted nervously to the phone. "Good morning, Tina," I said, summoning a confidence I didn't feel. "Mr. Reynolds." She hesitated. "I wasn't expecting you today." "Is Eric in?" I asked, though I already knew he would be. Monday mornings meant executive meetings. "He's in the conference room with the board and some visitors, but—" I didn't wait for her to finish. I strode past reception toward the conference room at the end of the hall, ignoring Tina's protests behind me. Through the glass walls, I could see Eric standing at the head of the table, gesturing at a presentation displayed on the screen. Sarah sat to his right, her expression serious. Across from them were 3 men and a woman I didn't recognize, all in expensive suits, taking notes. I pushed open the door without knocking. The conversation stopped abruptly. 5 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. "Alex," Eric said, his face draining of color. "This isn't the time." "Actually, I think it's exactly the time," I replied, closing the door behind me. "Since you're discussing the future of our company." Sarah looked uncomfortable, but not surprised to see me. "Alex, Eric, said you two had agreed to part ways. Is that what he told you?" I directed my question to Sarah, ignoring Eric completely. "Did he also tell you he locked me out of all our systems without warning and offered me a buyout that's worth pennies on the dollar?" The visitors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Perhaps we should reschedule," said one of the men, beginning to gather his papers. "No need," I said, addressing the group. "I won't take much of your time. I just want to know what Eric has told you about Cloud Secure and his plans." The woman in the charcoal suit spoke up. "Mr. Mitchell has been discussing a potential acquisition of Cloud Secure by our firm, Tech Giant Solutions. He presented quite an impressive growth trajectory." I nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. Tech Giant was one of the largest tech conglomerates in the country. They had a reputation for acquiring promising startups at aggressive valuations. "And did Mr. Mitchell mention that he's only a 50% owner of Cloud Secure? That every line of our core code was written jointly by both of us? That our client relationships have been built by both founders over 12 years? The visitors exchanged glances. Eric stepped forward. "Alex, you're embarrassing yourself. We can discuss this privately." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. In this drive is a complete history of our company's development. Emails, code repositories, client meetings, financial records, everything documenting my role as co-founder and equal partner. I'm happy to provide copies to everyone in this room. The room fell silent. "Ms. Winters," I continued, turning to Sarah, "you invested in us because you believed in both of our visions. Eric may have convinced you that I'm dispensable, but I'm prepared to challenge that assertion legally if necessary." Sarah's expression shifted from discomfort to concern. "Eric told me you were stepping back voluntarily to pursue other interests." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Is that what he told you? Ask him about the non-compete clause in my separation agreement then. Why would I need that if I was pursuing other interests?" The woman from Tech Giant cleared her throat. "Mr. Mitchell, we were under the impression that both founders were on board with this acquisition." Eric's face had turned from pale to flushed. "This is just a misunderstanding. Alex and I had discussed transitioning his role." "We discussed no such thing," I cut in. "The last conversation we had about Cloud Secure's future was planning our expansion into the healthcare sector. You can check the meeting minutes from last Tuesday." I turned my attention back to the visitors. I apologize for this disruption, but I couldn't allow negotiations to proceed under false pretenses. I am an equal owner of Cloud Secure, and any acquisition discussions need to include me. The oldest of the visitors, a silver-haired man with piercing blue eyes, studied me for a moment before speaking. Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate your candor. At Tech Giant, we value transparency above all else. Perhaps we should reschedule this discussion when both founders are prepared to present a unified front. Eric looked panicked. That's not necessary. Alex is just upset about some of the terms. I think it is necessary, the man interrupted, firmly. We're interested in Cloud Secure's technology and its people. If there's internal conflict among leadership, that's a red flag for us. He stood up, and the others followed suit. Ms. Winters, gentlemen, we'll be in touch when you've resolved your internal matters. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. As they filed out of the room, the woman in the charcoal suit handed me her business card. Jennifer Davis, VP of Acquisitions. Call me directly when you're ready to resume discussions. The door closed behind them, leaving Eric, Sarah, and me in uncomfortable silence. Sarah was the first to speak. What the hell is going on here? Eric, you told me Alex was willingly stepping away. Eric's composure had completely evaporated. It's complicated, Sarah. The company needs to move in a new direction, and Alex and I disagree on— Stop lying, I said quietly. Just tell her the truth. You saw an opportunity to cash out big with Tech Giant, and you didn't want to split the proceeds. So you manufactured a scenario where I was out of the picture. Sarah looked between us, her expression hardening as understanding dawned. Eric, is this true? Eric's silence was damning. I turned to leave, having said what I came to say, but paused at the door. By the way, Eric, you might want to check the Larson account. Their security protocol expires today, and they'll need the update patch by noon. The one that only I know how to implement. His head snapped up. What are you talking about? The Larson patch was scheduled for next week. No, it's today. It's in the system calendar. Oh, wait, you wouldn't have seen that because you changed all the passwords. Larson Industries was our biggest client, representing nearly 30% of our annual revenue. Their security needs were complex and required specialized attention that I had always personally provided. Eric's face fell as he realized the implications. Losing Larson would be catastrophic for Cloud Secure's valuation, especially with Tech Giant watching closely. You can't just abandon our clients, he said, a note of desperation in his voice. I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied calmly. You locked me out, remember? I don't need you anymore. I believe were your exact words. Sarah stood up, her expression resolute. This meeting is adjourned. Eric, my office now. Alex, please wait in the small conference room. We're going to sort this out immediately. As I walked out, I could feel Eric's eyes boring into my back. The hallway was eerily quiet. Word of my dramatic entrance had clearly spread throughout the office. Employees peered over their monitors and through doorways, quickly averting their gazes when I looked in their direction. I made my way to the small conference room and sat down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind a hollow ache. 12 years of friendship, of building something meaningful together, reduced to this: corporate warfare and betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Bold move. I like it. Jennifer Davis, Tech Giant. I smiled despite myself. Maybe all wasn't lost after all. 20 minutes later, Sarah entered the conference room alone, closing the door firmly behind her. Eric is contacting the Larson team, she said, taking a seat across from me. Now, tell me everything, from the beginning. So I did. I told her about the unexpected call on Friday, the revoked access, the insulting buyout offer. I showed her the text messages and emails, the documentation I'd gathered over the weekend. When I finished, Sarah was silent for a long moment, her fingers steepled under her chin. "I owe you an apology, Alex," she finally said. "I should have verified Eric's claims before agreeing to anything." "Why didn't you call me?" I asked. The question had been bothering me all weekend. Eric said you'd requested space, that you were taking it hard and needed time before you could discuss it rationally. She shook her head. "I should have known better. In 12 years, I've never seen you act irrationally about business." The door opened, and Eric walked in, his expression a mixture of anger and resignation. "Larson's been handled," he said stiffly. "For now." Sarah gestured for him to sit. "Eric has something to tell you, Alex." Eric remained standing. "Tech Giant's offer was for $50 million. I was going to offer you $5. The admission hung in the air between us. 10%. After 12 years, he values my contribution at 10%. "Why?" I asked simply. "What happened to change things so drastically?" Eric looked away. "You've been focused on maintaining our existing client base, while I've been pushing for expansion. Tech Giant doesn't care about our current clients. They want our technology to integrate into their ecosystem. I developed the integration prototype on my own, and they were impressed. I saw an opportunity." "An opportunity to cut me out," I said. "Business is business, Alex. I saw a chance to maximize my return." Sarah cleared her throat. "Well, that business decision just cost us a $50 million acquisition. Tech Giant's VP called me directly after they left. They're walking away unless both founders are fully on board." Eric's face fell. "What? They can't do that? The technology speaks for itself." "Apparently, they're not just buying technology," Sarah replied. "They're buying a team, a culture, a reputation. And right now, our reputation includes a founder who tries to cheat his partner out of millions." The reality of the situation seemed to finally hit Eric. He sank into a chair. "So what now?" he asked. Sarah looked at both of us. "Now, we either figure out a way forward together, or we liquidate and walk away with a fraction of what Tech Giant was offering." She stood up. "I'm giving you 2 hours to work this out. If you can't, I'm exercising my rights as an investor to force a sale of assets." With that, she left, closing the door firmly behind her. Eric and I sat in silence. 12 years of history and 3 days of betrayal stretching between us like a chasm. Finally, I spoke. "Why didn't you just talk to me? If you had concerns about my vision for the company, why go behind my back?" Eric ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen thousands of times in moments of stress. "Because I knew you wouldn't agree. You're always so focused on doing things the right way, building relationships, maintaining quality. I wanted to move faster, take bigger risks. Those relationships are what built this company," I said. "Those clients trust us because we've earned it, year after year." "I know," he admitted. "That's why I couldn't shut you out completely. The Larson situation proved that, but I thought I could handle everything else myself." I leaned forward. "Eric, I've never stood in the way of innovation or growth. But cutting corners on security isn't innovation. It's reckless." "The integration prototype works," he insisted. "It could revolutionize how our system connects with existing infrastructures." "Show me," I said. He looked up, surprised. "What?" "Show me the prototype. Convince me it's as good as you think it is." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw a glimmer of the old Eric, the passionate engineer who could talk for hours about code architecture and security protocols. "You really want to see it?" I nodded. "If it's good, I'll support it. If it needs work, we'll fix it. Together." Eric hesitated, then pulled out his laptop. "I'll need to restore your access." "That would be a start," I said. As he typed in commands to reinstate my credentials, I realized that whatever happened next, whether we salvaged our partnership or went our separate ways, Monday's meeting had indeed changed everything. Eric's prototype was impressive. I had to give him that. As we sat in the conference room, he walked me through the elegant architecture he'd developed, a system that would seamlessly integrate our security protocols with tech giant's vast ecosystem. See how the authentication layer maintains isolation while still allowing cross-platform communication? Eric pointed to a section of code. It's elegant and secure. I leaned closer, examining the implementation. The concept is solid, I admitted. But there's a vulnerability here in the handshake protocol. Eric frowned. Where? I pointed to a specific function. If someone intercepted the initial exchange, they could potentially inject malicious code during the handshake. You need an additional verification layer. Eric was silent for a moment, then his shoulders slumped. You're right. I missed that. It was a small admission, but significant. The old Eric would have acknowledged the oversight and immediately started working on a solution. This new Eric, the one who had tried to cut me out, seemed deflated by the discovery. It's an easy fix, I said, already mentally mapping out the solution. We could implement a secondary challenge response mechanism here. Eric looked up, surprised by my willingness to help. You'd still work on this? After everything? I met his gaze directly. The question is whether you still want to work with me. The door opened before he could respond. Sarah entered, looking between us expectantly. Well, she asked, have you two figured anything out? Eric straightened in his chair. Alex identified a security flaw in my prototype, a pretty significant one. Sarah's eyebrows rose. And that's good news? It's good news that he caught it now instead of after implementation, Eric explained. And it's fixable. I turned my laptop toward Sarah. The integration concept is solid. With some refinements, it could be exactly what Tech Giant is looking for. But it needs both our expertise to get it right. Sarah studied us carefully. So, you're saying you can work together? Eric and I exchanged glances. The betrayal was still fresh, the trust broken. But underneath that was 12 years of shared history, of building something valuable together. I'm willing to try, I said finally, for the sake of what we've built. Eric nodded slowly. Me too. Sarah didn't look entirely convinced. Tech Giant wants an answer by the end of the week. If you two can present a unified front and a solid plan, they might reconsider. But they were clear. They want both founders or neither. We'll be ready, Eric said with more confidence than I felt. After Sarah left, an awkward silence descended. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the fundamental breach remained. Why didn't you come to me first? I asked quietly. Before going to Tech Giant, before locking me out. We could have discussed your concerns, found a compromise. Eric sighed, rubbing his temples. Honestly? Because I've been frustrated for months. Every time I suggested a new direction, you'd raise concerns about client impacts or security implications. Because those concerns were valid, I countered. Yes, they were, but they were also barriers to growth. While we've been cautiously maintaining our existing client base, our competitors have been racing ahead. There was truth in his words. I had always been the more cautious one, the guardian of our reputation for reliability and security. Eric had been the visionary, always pushing the boundaries of what our technology could do. So instead of having that conversation, you decided to eliminate me entirely? Eric had the grace to look ashamed. I convinced myself it was a business decision, not a personal one, that the company needed to move in a direction you wouldn't support. And the lowball buyout offer, the non-compete clause, were those business decisions too? He couldn't meet my eyes. I talked myself into believing you'd be fine, that you had other interests you could pursue. I shook my head, disappointed but not surprised. Money changes people, Eric, but I never thought it would change us. The next few days were a blur of activity. With my access restored, I dove into the integration prototype, fixing the security vulnerability and enhancing several other features. Eric focused on preparing our presentation for Tech Giant, highlighting how our combined expertise made Cloud Secure uniquely valuable. We worked side by side but separately, communicating through code comments and technical documents rather than our usual banter. The easy camaraderie we'd built over a decade was gone, replaced by professional courtesy and careful distance. On Thursday evening, as we were finalizing the presentation, Jennifer Davis from Tech Giant called. "Mr. Reynolds, I wanted to check in on your progress," she said when I answered. "Our team is looking forward to tomorrow's meeting." "We'll be ready," I assured her. "Eric and I have made significant improvements to the integration prototype." "That's good to hear," she replied. "But I'll be honest, we're more interested in the partnership dynamics than the technical details at this point. The technology we know is solid. What we need to see is whether you two can truly work together going forward." Her words stayed with me after we hung up. Despite our surface-level cooperation, Eric and I hadn't truly addressed the fracture between us. We'd fallen back on our technical expertise, using work as a buffer against the harder conversation that needed to happen. I found Eric in the break room, staring blankly at the coffee machine. "We need to talk," I said. "Not about code, not about the presentation, about us." He looked up, exhaustion etched on his face. "What's there to say? I tried to push you out, you caught me, and now we're trying to salvage a deal." "That's not enough," I replied. Jennifer just called. "Tech Giant isn't just buying our technology, they're buying our partnership. They need to know if we can really work together." "And can we?" he asked bluntly. I leaned against the counter. "I don't know. You tell me. Was it really just about business, Eric? Or was there something else going on?" He was quiet for a long moment, then set down his coffee cup with a sigh. "Do you remember Carson Mitchell?" The name was vaguely familiar. "Your cousin? The one who came to our holiday party a few years ago?" Eric nodded. "He founded a startup around the same time we started Cloud Secure. Similar field, different approach. Last year, his company went public. He's worth over $200 million now." The pieces began to fall into place. "And you started thinking about what could have been if we'd made different choices." "Every family gathering became torture," Eric admitted. Carson talked about his new yacht, his house in Aspen, his private investments. Meanwhile, I'm still grinding away, building client relationships one at a time, watching every expense. "We've done well," I reminded him. "Cloud Secure is profitable, growing steadily. We're respected in the industry." "We've done fine," he corrected. "But we could have done so much more." When Tech Giant approached me about the acquisition, I saw it as our chance to finally make it big. But I knew you'd want to maintain control, ensure our clients were protected, and negotiate terms that would limit our personal upside. So you decided to cut me out entirely. He didn't deny it. I'm not proud of it. But yes, that was the plan. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Outside the break room windows, Seattle's skyline glittered against the evening sky, reminder of the dreams we'd had when we started. Two kids with laptops and ambition. "I can't pretend it didn't happen," I said finally, "and I can't guarantee I'll ever fully trust you again, but I'm willing to move forward if you are." "What does that mean exactly?" Eric asked. "It means we present to Tech Giant tomorrow as partners. Equal partners. We sell them on the vision we've built together, and after that, we'll see." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Friday's meeting with Tech Giant was scheduled for 10 a.m. Eric and I arrived at the office early, making final adjustments to our presentation and running through our talking points. Sarah arrived at 9:30, scrutinizing us both. "You two look better. Less like you're about to strangle each other." "We've reached an understanding," I said, not elaborating further. "Good. Because Tech Giant sent over a revised term sheet this morning. She handed each of us a document. They've Reduce their offer by 15%. Eric scanned the numbers, his face falling. 35 million instead of 50. Why? Risk adjustment, Sarah explained. They're concerned about leadership stability. I reviewed the terms carefully. The reduction was significant but not devastating. More importantly, the structure of the deal had changed. They're offering earnouts based on post-acquisition performance, I noted, pointing to a specific clause. Sarah nodded. Yes, they want skin in the game from both of you. 3-year commitment, with bonuses tied to integration milestones. Eric looked up from the document. So they're not just buying the company, they're buying us. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. You'll both be joining Tech Giant's leadership team, running Cloud Secure as a semi-autonomous division. That is, if you accept. The Tech Giant delegation arrived precisely at 10 a.m. Jennifer Davis, the silver-haired man who I now knew was Robert Whitman, Tech Giant's chief innovation officer, and 3 other executives. After introductions and small talk, Eric and I presented our vision for Cloud Secure within the Tech Giant ecosystem. We demonstrated the enhanced integration prototype, addressed questions about scalability and security, and outlined our client transition strategy. Throughout the presentation, I noticed Robert Whitman watching us closely, paying less attention to the slides than to how Eric and I interacted. When we concluded, he was the first to speak. Impressive technical work, he acknowledged. But I'm more interested in what happened between Monday and today. 3 days ago, you were at each other's throats. Now you're presenting as a unified team. What changed? Eric and I exchanged glances. This was the moment of truth. We had an honest conversation, I said, about what went wrong and why. And? Whitman pressed. Eric stepped forward. I made a serious mistake. I let ambition and jealousy cloud my judgment, and I betrayed someone who's been essential to our success for 12 years. The room fell silent. Such naked honesty was rare in acquisition meetings. Alex caught a critical security flaw in my prototype, Eric continued. One that could have had serious consequences if implemented. It was a stark reminder that we're stronger together than apart. Jennifer Davis leaned forward. And you, Mr. Reynolds. Can you move past this betrayal? All eyes turned to me. It was the question I'd been asking myself all week. Trust is earned, I said carefully. It can be broken quickly, but rebuilding it takes time. What I can say with certainty is that Cloud Secure's success has always depended on the combination of our strengths. Eric's vision and my caution, his innovation and my reliability. That hasn't changed. Robert Whitman studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Well said. Partnership isn't just about the good times. It's about how you handle the challenges. He turned to his team. I think we've seen enough. They conferred briefly in hushed tones. Then Whitman addressed us again. We're prepared to proceed with the acquisition as outlined in the revised term sheet, with one amendment. He nodded to an assistant who distributed new documents. We're restoring 5 of the 15% reduction, bringing the offer to $40 million with the earnout structure intact. Eric's eyes widened. What changed your mind? Jennifer Davis smiled. Honesty has value, Mr. Mitchell. So does accountability. You acknowledge your mistake openly, which suggests you've learned from it. She turned to me. And you, Mr. Reynolds, demonstrated something equally important. The ability to move forward without holding a grudge, while still maintaining appropriate caution. Sarah, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. So, the deal is back on the table at $40 million, with a 3-year commitment from both founders? Correct, Whitman confirmed. We believe in the technology, but more importantly, we believe in the partnership. Tested and proven resilient. The meeting concluded with handshakes and agreements to have legal teams finalize the details. As the tech giant representatives departed, Sarah pulled both of us aside. Congratulations, she said, her relief evident. You pulled it off, but I have one question. Are you both really committed to this? 3 years is a long time to work together if there's still bad blood. Eric looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. Alex? The past week had been a roller coaster of emotions. Shock, betrayal, anger, cautious reconciliation. The easy answer would have been to take the money and go our separate ways. But something about that felt wrong, like abandoning a cathedral. Half built. I'm in, I said finally. Not because I've forgotten what happened, but because what we've built is worth fighting for. Eric extended his hand. Partners. I hesitated only briefly before shaking it. Partners, but with new ground rules. Absolutely, he agreed quickly. Full transparency, equal decision-making, regular check-ins. Sarah looked satisfied. Good. Because I'll be watching both of you like a hawk for the next 3 years. My investment may be cashing out, but my reputation is still tied to your success. That evening, as we cleared out our personal items from the office, tech giant would be moving us to their Seattle campus the following month, I found an old photo tucked in my desk drawer. It showed Eric and me at our first industry conference, standing proudly in front of our makeshift booth, grinning with the optimism of youth. Remember this? I asked, showing him the photo when he walked by. Eric took it, a smile spreading across his face. God, we were so young. And that booth was terrible. Those foam board displays we stayed up all night making. But we landed at Parker Systems because of that conference, I reminded him. Our first major client. You landed Parker, Eric corrected. I was too busy talking about technical specs. But you connected with Jim Parker personally, found out his daughter was applying to colleges and gave him advice about the Washington State engineering program. I had almost forgotten that detail. You remember that? Eric handed back the photo. I remember everything, Alex. The good and the bad. That's why this past week has been so... He trailed off, searching for the right word. Painful, I suggested. Shameful, he said quietly. 12 years of friendship, and I was willing to throw it away for money. I carefully placed the photo in my box of belongings. Why did you text me that day? I don't need you anymore. That was unnecessarily cruel. Eric winced. I was trying to convince myself as much as you. If I acknowledged how much I still needed your expertise, your perspective, your steadying influence, I couldn't have gone through with it. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. And maybe that was enough for now. Monday's meeting changed. Everything, I said, echoing the words that had been running through my mind all week. Not just the deal, but us. We can't go back to what we were before. No, Eric agreed, but maybe we can build something better, more honest, more balanced. As we walked out of the Cloud Secure office for the last time as independent owners, the future stretched before us, uncertain but full of possibility. Tech Giant offered resources beyond what we could have achieved on our own, and the earn-out structure meant our success would be richly rewarded. But more importantly, we had weathered a storm that would have sunk most partnerships. The trust between us had been severely damaged, but not destroyed. And sometimes, breaks that heal make the bond stronger than it was before. The Seattle rain had stopped, and the evening sky was clear as we reached the parking garage. Dinner? Eric suggested hesitantly. To celebrate the deal? It was a small gesture. An olive branch extended across the chasm of betrayal. Sure, I said after a moment's consideration. But you're paying. Eric laughed, a genuine sound that brought back echoes of easier times. Of course, it's the least I can do. As we walked toward the restaurant district, I realized that Monday's meeting truly had changed everything, not by erasing the past, but by creating an opportunity for a different future. One where partnership wasn't just about success and failure, but about falling and finding the strength to stand up again, together. 1 month later, Eric and I stood in the gleaming lobby of Tech Giant Seattle campus. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and Elliott Bay beyond. Employees bustled past, engaged in animated conversations about projects we had yet to understand. "Ready for this?" Eric asked, glancing at me sideways. I adjusted my tie, feeling slightly out of place despite my carefully chosen suit. "As ready as I'll ever be." Jennifer Davis greeted us at reception, her professional demeanor softened by a genuine smile. "Welcome to Tech Giant, gentlemen. Your team is eager to meet you." She led us through a maze of sleek corridors to a large open workspace where about 20 people gathered. Some faces I recognized from Cloud Secure, others were new, Tech Giant employees. "Assigned to our division. Everyone," Jennifer announced. "Please welcome Alex Reynolds and Eric Mitchell, the new co-directors of Tech Giant Security Solutions, formerly known as Cloud Secure." Applause rippled through the group. I scanned their expressions: excitement, curiosity, and from some of our original team members, lingering uncertainty. The news of our near breakup had spread through the company grapevine, leaving questions about the stability of our leadership. Jennifer guided us to a conference room for our first executive briefing. Robert Whitman was already waiting, along with Tech Giant CFO and several department heads. "The integration team has drafted a 6-month roadmap," Whitman began after introductions were complete. "We'd like your input before finalizing." The presentation that followed outlined an aggressive timeline for absorbing Cloud Secure's technology into Tech Giant's ecosystem. Our client base would be gradually transitioned to the new infrastructure, with assurances of continuity and enhanced service. When the presentation concluded, all eyes turned to us. This was the moment where our united front would either solidify or crumble. "The technical integration looks solid," I began, "but I have concerns about the client transition timeline." Several Tech Giant executives shifted uncomfortably. A month ago, this might have been where Eric would contradict me, pushing for faster implementation over client comfort. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. "Alex is right. Our largest clients, particularly in healthcare and finance, will need a more gradual approach. We've built relationships on trust and reliability. Rushing them could damage that foundation." Whitman studied us both. "What do you suggest instead?" Eric deferred to me with a slight gesture. "A 3-tiered approach," I explained. "Smaller clients with less complex needs can transition according to your original timeline. Mid-tier clients get an extended timeline with additional support. And our enterprise clients receive a white-glove transition with dedicated teams ensuring zero disruption." The CFO frowned. "That would significantly increase integration costs." "Initially, yes," Eric acknowledged, "but it preserves long-term revenue and substantially reduces the risk of client loss during transition." He pulled up figures on his tablet. "Our analysis shows the ROI would justify the additional expense within 8 months. I tried not to show my surprise. This was new, Eric anticipating my concerns and preparing data to support them. In the past, our dynamic had been more divided. I raised caution flags, he pushed for speed, and we eventually compromised somewhere in the middle. The meeting concluded with Whitman approving our modified approach. As we left the conference room, he pulled us aside. "Impressive first showing," he commented. "Though I'll admit, I was expecting more friction between you two." Eric glanced at me before responding. "We're learning to leverage our different perspectives, instead of fighting against them." "Good," Whitman nodded. "Because the real challenges are just beginning." He wasn't wrong. The following weeks tested our newfound collaboration in ways we couldn't have anticipated. Integrating 2 complex technical ecosystems revealed incompatibilities that hadn't appeared in our initial planning. Several key Cloud Secure engineers threatened to quit rather than adapt to Tech Giant's development protocols. And our largest client, Larson Industries, expressed serious concerns about the acquisition's impact on their security infrastructure. Through it all, Eric and I maintained a united front publicly, even when we disagreed behind closed doors. Our weekly private meetings, a new tradition established after the acquisition, became a space for honest, sometimes heated discussions about direction and priorities. 6 weeks after the transition, we faced our first major crisis. A vulnerability was discovered in Tech Giant's primary product line, one that could potentially expose user data across multiple platforms. Because Cloud Secure's integration was still in progress, our systems weren't directly affected, but our expertise in security protocols made us the logical team to address the issue. Whitman called an emergency meeting at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. By midnight, we had assembled a task force of engineers from both original companies, working side by side to patch the vulnerability before it could be exploited. I focused on client communication strategy, while Eric led the technical response team. By dawn, they had developed a patch, but implementing it across Tech Giant's massive infrastructure would require coordination across multiple divisions. "We need to take the system offline during implementation," Eric insisted during the 6 a.m. briefing with Tech Giant's executive team. The CTO shook his head. "Impossible. A global outage would cost millions in revenue and damage user trust. And a data breach would cost billions," I countered. "Plus regulatory penalties and long-term reputation damage." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. "How long would the outage need to be?" Whitman asked finally. Eric and I exchanged glances. This was the moment where our old patterns might have emerged. Eric pushing for the fastest, most aggressive approach, me advocating for caution. 3 hours, Eric said, surprising me. "We initially estimated 2, but I'm building in a buffer for unexpected complications." I nodded my agreement. "And we should schedule it for 3 a.m. Eastern, lowest global usage period." Whitman looked between us, then made his decision. "Do it, but not a minute longer than 3 hours." The implementation was a masterclass in technical orchestration. Engineers from both legacy teams worked in perfect synchrony, their previous cultural differences forgotten in the focused intensity of the task. Eric and I moved throughout the command center, troubleshooting issues as they arose, reinforcing confidence when obstacles appeared. 2 hours and 47 minutes after taking the system offline, the patch was fully implemented, tested, and verified secure. As the platforms came back online, a spontaneous round of applause broke out in the command center. In the aftermath, as exhausted team members trickled out to find food or catch a few hours of sleep, Eric found me in a quiet corner, staring out at the Seattle skyline as dawn broke over the city. "We did it," he said, handing me a cup of coffee. "We did," I agreed, accepting the offering. "Your team performed brilliantly." "Our team," he corrected gently. "Not Cloud Secure, not Tech Giant. Ours." I considered this. In the intensity of the crisis, the artificial boundaries between the original companies had indeed dissolved. People had gravitated toward roles that suited their skills, regardless of where they had started. This is what integration really looks like, I realized. Aloud, not organizational charts or technical systems, but people finding their place in something new. Eric nodded. And it only took a potential catastrophe to get us there. We shared a tired laugh, the kind that comes after surviving something difficult, together. "Whitman's watching us from the mezzanine," Eric noted casually. "Has been for the last 10 minutes. I didn't turn to look. Testing our partnership under fire." "Did we pass?" "With flying colors," a new voice confirmed. Whitman had approached, silently from behind. "That was impressive work, gentlemen. The board will be pleased." He joined us at the window, watching the city come alive below. "You know, when we first considered acquiring Cloud Secure, there was significant debate about whether to keep the founding team intact. This was news to me." "What was the concern?" "History," Whitman said simply. Founders often struggle to adapt when their creation becomes part of something larger. They resist necessary changes, fight to maintain control, eventually become obstacles rather than assets. What convinced you otherwise? Eric asked. Whitman smiled slightly. Jennifer, she insisted that your partnership was the most valuable asset Cloud Secure possessed. More than the technology, more than the client relationships. She saw something worth preserving. He turned to face us directly. After tonight, I'm inclined to agree with her assessment. The vulnerability crisis marked a turning point in our integration. What could have been a catastrophic failure instead became a case study in successful crisis management, highlighted in company-wide communications and industry publications. Our team's stock rose within the tech giant hierarchy, earning us additional resources and autonomy. 3 months after the acquisition, Jennifer Davis invited us to lunch at an upscale restaurant overlooking the water. I have news, she announced, after we ordered. The executive committee has reviewed your first quarter performance, and they're impressed. So impressed that they've approved accelerating your earnout schedule. Eric sat forward. Meaning what exactly? Meaning you'll receive the first milestone payment next month instead of at the 6-month mark, Jennifer explained. And they're adding a performance bonus structure on top of the original agreement. I felt a surge of vindication. We hadn't just survived the transition, we were thriving. There's more, Jennifer continued. Robert wants to expand your division's mandate. Beyond integrating Cloud Secure's technology, he wants you to oversee security protocols across all tech giant products. Eric whistled softly. That's a massive responsibility. And a significant vote of confidence, I added. Jennifer nodded. It comes with additional resources, of course. You'll need to grow your team substantially. As she outlined the details of the expansion, I found myself watching Eric. 6 months ago, this kind of opportunity would have had him buzzing with excitement, already sketching plans on napkins. Today, he was listening carefully, asking thoughtful questions about implementation timelines and team structure. After Jennifer left for another meeting, Eric and I lingered over coffee. This is what you always wanted, I observed. The big stage, the resources to match your vision. He traced the rim of his cup with one finger. It is. But it's different than I imagined. How so? I thought success would feel more like... He searched for the right words. Like winning. Like proving something. And instead? He looked up. Instead, it feels like responsibility. Like the work is just beginning, not culminating. I smiled, recognizing the transformation in my old friend. Welcome to leadership, Eric. The view gets better, but the air gets thinner. He laughed. When did you get so philosophical? Around 3 a.m. during the vulnerability crisis, I think. Sleep deprivation brings clarity. Our conversation shifted to practical matters, how to structure the expanded division, which team members to promote, what additional hiring we'd need. The easy collaboration between us now felt natural, our complementary styles strengthening rather than opposing each other. That evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I received a text from Eric. Rufin 10? I found him on the terrace, atop tech giant's building, looking out over the city as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Remember our first office? He asked without turning around. That converted warehouse space in Belltown with the leaky ceiling. I joined him at the railing. How could I forget? We kept computers covered with plastic tarps during rainstorms. We've come a long way. We have, I agreed. He turned to face me, his expression serious. I need to say something. Something I should have said months ago. I waited, sensing the importance of the moment. I'm sorry, Alex. Truly sorry. Not just for trying to push you out, but for betraying our friendship. For thinking that money was worth more than what we'd built together. The apology hung in the air between us. Simple, direct, and long overdue. I know, I said finally. I've seen it in how you've changed, how we've worked together these past months. Actions speak louder than words. Still, he insisted, I needed to say it. I nodded my acceptance. Apology accepted. Relief washed over his features. So where do we go from here? It was a loaded question. Our 3-year commitment to Tech Giant was just beginning. Our division was expanding, our responsibilities growing. The partnership that had fractured and been tentatively repaired would face countless new challenges. Forward, I said simply. Together. Eric extended his hand. Partners. This time I took it without hesitation. Partners. As we stood there, Seattle spreading out before us like a sea of possibilities, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. The betrayal had been real, the pain genuine. Trust, once broken, would always bear a scar, a reminder of vulnerability. But what had been rebuilt in its place was perhaps stronger than what had existed before. A partnership based not on blind faith or shared history alone, but on conscious choice and clear-eyed acceptance of both strengths and flaws. Monday's meeting had indeed changed everything, not by magically erasing the betrayal, but by creating an opening for something new to emerge from the ruins of what was broken. A partnership tested by fire, tempered by challenge, and ultimately defined not by its failures, but by its resilience. The Pacific Northwest sunset faded into twilight, streetlights flickering to life across the city. In Tech Giant's gleaming tower, teams of engineers continued working on the systems we now guided together. Below us stretched the future, unknown, challenging, but full of promise. Ready for whatever comes next? Eric asked, echoing a question we'd asked each other countless times over the years, from college dorm rooms to corporate boardrooms. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly from my shoulders. Always. 6. Months later, as we presented our expanded security framework to Tech Giant's global leadership team, I caught Robert Whitman watching us with satisfaction. The presentation was a true collaboration, my strategic vision for client protection supported by Eric's innovative implementation approaches, neither dominating, both essential. When we concluded to enthusiastic applause, Whitman approached us privately. You know, he said thoughtfully, when a partnership fractures as severely as yours did, it rarely recovers. Most would have taken the money and gone their separate ways. We considered it, I admitted. What made you choose this path instead? Eric and I exchanged glances, a familiar communication passing between us without words. We realized something. Important, Eric answered. What we could build together would always be greater than what we could create apart. Whitman nodded approvingly. That's a lesson many partnerships never learn. As he walked away, I reflected on the twisted path that had led us here. The betrayal had been painful, but illuminating, revealing weaknesses in our partnership that had always existed beneath the surface, forcing us to address them rather than continuing in comfortable ignorance. He's right, you know, I said to Eric as we gathered our materials. Most partnerships wouldn't have survived what we went through. Eric considered this. Most partnerships don't have 12 years of foundation to fall back on. Or a Monday meeting that changes everything, I added with a smile. He laughed, the sound echoing in the empty conference room. That meeting, I was terrified when you walked in. You should have been, I quipped. I was ready to burn the whole thing down. And now? I looked around at what we had built from the ashes, a division 3 times the size of our original company, innovations that would protect millions of users, a partnership stronger for having been broken and reforged. Now, I said, I'm glad. I showed up. 1 year into our Tech Giant journey, Eric and I found ourselves in Zurich, representing the company at the International Cybersecurity Conference. Our presentation on integrated cross-platform security protocols had drawn the largest audience of the event, with industry leaders and competitors alike taking notes as we outlined our approach. Questions? Eric asked as we concluded to enthusiastic applause. A woman in the 3rd row raised her hand. Diana Chen, ByteShield Technologies. Your integration model is impressive, but how do you handle legacy systems with outdated encryption? Standards? I stepped forward to answer. This had been my particular focus during the expansion. As I explained our tiered adaptation framework, I noticed someone slipping into the back of the room. Carson Mitchell, Eric's cousin, the successful tech entrepreneur whose achievements had sparked Eric's crisis of confidence. Eric noticed him, too, his rhythm faltering slightly mid-sentence before he recovered. We finished fielding questions professionally, but I could sense Eric's tension as we wrapped up. Carson approached us as attendees filtered out of the hall. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, he radiated the particular confidence of self-made success. "Impressive presentation, cuz," he said, clapping Eric on the shoulder. "Tech giant made a smart acquisition." "Thanks, Carson," Eric replied, his tone carefully neutral. "You remember Alex?" Carson shook my hand firmly. "Of course. The security wizard behind Cloud Secure. Your reputation precedes you." "As does yours," I replied diplomatically. ByteSync's quantum-resistant encryption has been making waves. He smiled, pleased by the recognition. "We're pushing boundaries. Speaking of which, I'm hosting a reception for select innovators at my hotel suite tonight. You both should join us." After he departed, Eric exhaled slowly. "Well, that was unexpected." "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit I recognized from our early pitch meetings. "Yeah, it's just seeing him here, in our space. It's different from family gatherings." "Different how?" "This is professional territory. He's evaluating us as peers, not just family." I studied my partner's expression, looking for signs of the envy that had nearly destroyed our partnership. Instead, I saw something closer to uncertainty. "Does his opinion still matter that much to you?" I asked carefully. Eric considered the question. "Less than it did, but old habits die hard." "Then let's go to his reception," I suggested. "Show him exactly what we've built." The reception was exactly as ostentatious as I'd expected. A penthouse suite with panoramic views of Lake Zurich, gourmet catering, and a curated guest list of tech elite. Carson played the perfect host, circulating among his guests with practiced charm. "Tech giant security duo," he exclaimed when we arrived, guiding us toward a group of executives. "Everyone, meet my cousin Eric Mitchell and his partner Alex Reynolds. Their Cloud Secure acquisition has become Tech Giant's crown jewel." The conversation flowed around industry trends and market projections. I watched Eric carefully, noticing how he gradually relaxed, contributing insights with growing confidence. This wasn't the same man who had spiraled into jealousy and betrayal a year ago. This Eric was secure in his achievements, comfortable in his own success. Later, as we stepped onto the terrace for some air, Carson joined us with glasses of scotch. "Quite a view," he commented, gesturing toward the illuminated city. "It is," Eric agreed. "You've done well for yourself, Carson." Carson smiled, swirling his drink. "As have you. Though I admit, I was surprised when I heard about the acquisition. I always assumed Cloud Secure would go public eventually." "Plans change," I interjected. "Sometimes for the better." Carson's gaze shifted to me, suddenly more calculating than casual. "Indeed they do. I've always been curious about your partnership. 12 years is practically a lifetime in our industry." "It hasn't always been smooth sailing," Eric admitted with a pointed glance at me. Carson raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" I decided to take control of the narrative. "We had a major disagreement about the acquisition initially. Eric actually locked me out of our systems at one point." Carson's eyes widened. "Seriously? That doesn't sound like my rule-following cousin." "People can surprise you," Eric said, a complexity in his tone that Carson couldn't possibly understand. "Sometimes even themselves." "How did you resolve it?" Carson asked, genuinely curious. Eric and I exchanged glances, a year of rebuilt trust, passing between us. We remembered what made us successful in the first place, I explained. Our different perspectives, combined, create something stronger than either of us could build alone. Carson studied us thoughtfully. That's refreshingly mature. Most tech partnerships implode at the first sign of serious conflict. We came close, Eric acknowledged. Closer than I like to admit. What stopped you? Carson pressed. Eric met my eyes briefly before answering. Monday's meeting. The phrase had become shorthand between us for that pivotal confrontation, the moment when everything could have ended but instead began again. Carson looked confused, but didn't pursue it. Well, whatever happened, tech giant clearly got the better end of the deal. Your division's growth is the talk of the industry. Later that night, as we walked back to our hotel through Zurich's quiet streets, Eric seemed contemplative. A penny for your thoughts? I prompted. I was just thinking about how differently this evening could have gone if you hadn't walked into that conference room a year ago. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Carson would still be the successful cousin you envied from afar. And I'd be the one who betrayed his best friend for money, Eric added quietly. Not exactly a legacy to be proud of. But that's not how the story went, I reminded him. Thanks to you. Thanks to us, I corrected. It took both of us to rebuild what was broken. The Zurich conference marked another milestone in our evolving partnership. Upon our return to Seattle, Robert Whitman called us into his office with news that would once again test our unity. Tech Giant is restructuring, he announced without preamble. We're creating 4 autonomous divisions with dedicated leadership teams. Security will become its own vertical, with expanded resources and headcount. Eric leaned forward. That sounds like an opportunity. It is, Whitman confirmed. But there's a catch. The board wants a single division head, not co-directors. The statement hung in the air between us. After a year of carefully balanced co-leadership, one of us would need to step into a superior position. What's the timeline for this decision? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. 2 weeks, Whitman replied. I need a recommendation from both of you by then. As we left his office, the tension was palpable. We walked in silence to our shared workspace, closing the door behind us. Well, Eric said finally, this is awkward. I laughed despite myself. That's one word for it. He dropped into his chair, running a hand through his hair. So, how do we handle this? In the old days, this would have sparked an immediate competition between us. Eric would have advocated for himself based on his visionary approach, while I would have emphasized my steady reliability. We would have lobbied separately, undermined each other subtly, and damaged our relationship in the process. Instead, I asked a different question. What's best for the division? Eric looked surprised, then thoughtful. Objectively speaking, I nodded. Complete honesty, strengths and weaknesses. You're better with client relationships and team management, he said after a moment's consideration. People trust you implicitly. You see the human element in every technical decision. And you're the visionary, I acknowledged. You see possibilities others miss, push boundaries that need pushing. You inspire innovation. We sat with this assessment, both recognizing its accuracy. So where does that leave us? Eric asked. With a difficult but necessary conversation about who should lead and who should support. Over the next week, we conducted a thorough, honest evaluation of our respective strengths, weaknesses, and the division's needs. We solicited confidential feedback from our team leaders, reviewed performance metrics, and analyzed future challenges. The answer, when it finally crystallized, was surprising yet obvious. We requested a meeting with Whitman before the 2 weeks deadline. We've reached a decision, I began once we were seated in his office. Whitman looked between us expectantly. And? Eric should lead the division, I stated firmly. Eric immediately added, with Alex as Chief Operating Officer, a position with equal compensation and clear authority over operational decisions. Whitman's eyebrows rose. That's not the structure the board outlined. It's the structure that will be most effective, I countered. Eric's vision will drive innovation, while my focus on implementation and client relationships will ensure stable growth. We've prepared a detailed proposal, Eric added, sliding a document across the desk, including organization charts, decision-making protocols, and projected outcomes. Whitman skimmed the document, his expression shifting from skepticism to consideration. This is unusually thoughtful. Most executives fight for the top position without regard for actual fit. We tried that approach once, Eric said with a meaningful glance at me. It didn't work out well for anyone. Whitman leaned back in his chair. I'll present this to the board. No guarantees, but I think they'll listen. 2 days later, our proposed structure was approved. The team's response was overwhelmingly positive. They had witnessed our complementary leadership styles and understood the logic behind the arrangement. As we settled into our new roles, an unexpected opportunity arose. Tech Giant was launching an internal venture fund to invest in promising startups within our industry. Each division head could nominate candidates for investment. We should back Miller's team, Eric suggested during our weekly strategy session. Zoe Miller was a brilliant engineer who had approached us with an innovative approach to biometric authentication. I agree, I said, reviewing her proposal again. The technology is solid, and she's assembled a strong founding team. Eric smiled. Look at us, becoming venture capitalists, full circle from our own startup days. With considerably more resources at our disposal, I noted. Under our mentorship, Miller's startup flourished, securing a significant investment from tech giants, fund and establishing itself as a rising star in the security space. Watching her team's excitement as they moved into their first real office, I was reminded of our own early days. The passion, the uncertainty, the unlimited possibility. They remind me of us, Eric commented as we left their launch party. Without the questionable fashion choices and ramen diet, I laughed. Speak for yourself. My fashion was impeccable. Your lucky pitch sweater had elbow holes and coffee stains, he countered. And we never lost a client's pitch when I wore it, I reminded him. As Tech Giant's security division continued to expand, our partnership evolved into something neither of us could have imagined during that fateful confrontation. The trust we had rebuilt proved resilient through market downturns, competitive challenges, and the everyday stresses of corporate leadership. 2 years into our Tech Giant journey, we found ourselves at another crossroads. Our earnout period was ending, which meant we could leave with our full compensation package and pursue new opportunities. Have you thought about what's next? Eric asked as we shared drinks on his deck, watching the sunset over Elliott Bay. Our commitment to Tech Giant officially ends next month. I had been considering this question for weeks. Several venture firms have reached out. There's certainly opportunity there. I've had similar conversations, Eric admitted, plus an offer to teach at Washington State's business school. Professor Mitchell, I teased. It has a certain ring to it. He smiled, but his expression remained thoughtful. What about us? After everything we've built together, it seems strange to simply go our separate ways. Who says we have to, Eric? Looked up, surprised. You'd want to start something new? Even after you locked me out and told me you didn't need me anymore? I finished for him. The sting of those words long faded. Water under the bridge, Eric. We're different people now. Better partners than we ever were before. What would you want to build? He asked, a familiar excitement kindling in his eyes. Something meaningful, I replied. Something that leverages everything we've learned. The technology, yes, but also the human element. How to build teams, how to navigate conflict, how to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Eric nodded slowly. An incubator, maybe? For security startups with promising technology but inexperienced founders? We could mentor them through the pitfalls we faced. I built on his idea. Help them avoid our mistakes. And make strategic investments where appropriate, he added. The concept took shape between us, a natural evolution of our journey from college students with a dream to corporate executives with experience and resources. Reynolds Mitchell. Ventures, Eric suggested. Or Mitchell Reynolds. I'm not picky. Alphabetical makes more sense, I countered with a smile. And we'll need a third partner, someone who can balance us both. Sarah, we said simultaneously, thinking of our original investor who had stood by us through the darkest moments of our partnership. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, I reflected on the winding path that had brought us here. From betrayal to reconciliation, from fractured trust to strengthened bonds, our story had unfolded in ways neither of us could have predicted. 3 years ago, when you sent that text, I don't need you anymore. Did you ever imagine we'd be sitting here now, planning our next venture together? I asked. Eric was quiet for a moment, contemplating the question. No, he finally admitted. Back then, I was blind to what truly mattered. I was measuring success in dollars instead of impact, in personal gain instead of shared achievement. And now? Now I understand what you always knew. That true success isn't what you build, but who you build it with. That partnership, when it works, creates possibilities neither person could achieve alone. 3 months later, we stood in the modest office space we'd leased for Reynolds Mitchell Ventures. Sarah had enthusiastically joined as our third partner, bringing her financial acumen and investor network to complement our technical and operational expertise. Our first cohort of security startups would arrive the following week. 5 promising, teams with innovative approaches and limited experience, much like we had been 15 years ago. Ready for this new chapter? Sarah asked, looking around at the space we were transforming. Eric caught my eye across the room, a silent acknowledgement passing between us, of how far we'd come, of lessons painfully learned, of a partnership tested, broken, and ultimately strengthened through adversity. More than ready, I replied. That evening, as I prepared to leave, I found a small package on my desk with a note in Eric's handwriting. For new beginnings. Inside was a framed photograph, not the old one from our first conference, but a new one taken at Tech Giant's farewell reception. Eric and I stood side by side, older and wiser, the evidence of our journey etched in smile lines and confident postures. Beneath the photo was an inscription. Partnership isn't about perfect harmony, it's about creating something meaningful from our differences. Here's to the next chapter. I placed the frame on my desk, a daily reminder of an essential truth, that sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to discover what truly matters, that relationships worth having are also worth fighting for, and that sometimes a single meeting on a Monday morning can change not just your circumstances, but who you fundamentally are. Reynolds Mitchell Ventures celebrated its second anniversary with a gathering that transformed our industrial chic office space into a showcase of innovation. The startups from our first 2 cohorts demonstrated their technologies while investors and industry leaders mingled, exchanging business cards and possibilities. Quite the turnaround from when you stormed into my conference room, Eric murmured as we clinked glasses, watching Zoe Miller, now CEO of Biometric Trust, our most successful investment, charm a group of potential clients. I prefer to think of it as making a dramatic entrance, I countered with a smile. Sarah joined us, resplendent in a midnight blue suit. The Seattle Business Journal just confirmed, we're on the cover of next month's Innovators to Watch issue. All 3 of us? Eric asked, surprised. Would I accept anything less? Sarah replied with a raised eyebrow. Our unconventional three-way partnership had raised eyebrows in the venture capital world initially. Traditional firms typically featured a clear hierarchy with designated roles. Our collaborative approach, where decisions required majority agreement and each partner maintained equal equity, defied convention but proved remarkably effective. As the evening wound down, we gathered our team for a toast. 20 people now. Worked directly for Reynolds Mitchell Ventures, not counting the 40-plus entrepreneurs in our portfolio companies. To possibilities, I proposed, raising my glass, and to the partnerships that make them reality. After the guests departed, Eric, Sarah, and I settled into our comfortable meeting room, dubbed the Phoenix by our staff in reference to our partnership's rebirth from the ashes of near destruction. "We've had an acquisition offer," Sarah announced, without preamble. Innovest Capital wants to absorb us into their ecosystem. The number is substantial. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a term sheet outlining an offer that made tech giant's acquisition of Cloud Secure look modest by comparison. Eric whistled softly. "That's a lot of zeros." "They want our portfolio, our methodology, and our team," Sarah continued. "All 3 of us would receive 5-year contracts with generous compensation packages." "What's the catch?" I asked, scanning the document. "We'd lose autonomy," Sarah replied. "Become a division within their corporate structure. Their investment committee would have final say on all future funding decisions." Eric and I exchanged glances. We'd been down this road before, the promise of resources balanced against the sacrifice of independence. "What do you think?" Eric asked me, his expression carefully neutral. 5 years ago, this conversation might have devolved into an argument, with Eric pushing for the financial upside while I advocated for independence. But our journey had changed us both. "I think we should consider it carefully," I said. "Evaluate how it aligns with our long-term vision." Eric nodded. "And consider the impact on our portfolio companies and team." "Very diplomatic, both of you," Sarah observed with amusement. "But what's your gut feeling?" Eric leaned back in his chair. "Honestly, it feels premature. We're just hitting our stride, developing a model that works. Joining a corporate structure now might stifle that innovation." "I agree," I added. "The financial upside is tempting, but we'd be trading away the freedom that makes us effective. Our entrepreneurs trust us because we're independent, because we've walked their path." Sarah smiled, clearly pleased with our responses. "I was hoping you'd say that. I'll draft a respectful decline." As she gathered her materials, Eric asked, "Did you ever seriously consider accepting?" "I wanted to hear your perspectives first," she replied. "Partnership means weighing all viewpoints before making decisions." After Sarah departed, Eric and I remained, the quiet hum of the empty office creating a peaceful backdrop for reflection. 5. "Years ago, I would have pushed hard for that deal," Eric admitted. "The payout, the prestige, the ability to tell Carson I'd scored another major exit. And I would have resisted just as hard," I acknowledged. "Dug in my heels about maintaining our independence without fully considering the benefits. Yet here, we are reaching the same conclusion through different paths." Eric shook his head with a smile. "Growth is strange, isn't it?" "Speaking of growth," I segued, "we need to discuss Liam Turner's proposal." Liam was our newest entrepreneur, a brilliant but prickly developer whose cybersecurity concept showed extraordinary promise but required significant refinement. "He's resisting the team expansion," Eric noted. "Wants to maintain control over all aspects of development." "Remind you of anyone?" I asked with a pointed look. Eric laughed. "Both of us, at different points. You with client relationships, me with technical direction." "He needs a co-founder," I suggested. "Someone with complementary skills who can challenge his assumptions." "Playing matchmaker now, are we?" Eric teased. "More like pattern recognition," I countered. "Some journeys are easier with the right partner." The following week, We invited Liam to lunch at a quiet restaurant near our office. Only in his mid-20s he arrived in rumpled clothes, his brilliant mind evident in his rapid-fire speech and impatient gestures. "Your security protocol has transformative potential," Eric began after pleasantries were exchanged. "But the implementation needs work before it's market-ready." Liam bristled visibly. "The core architecture is sound. I just need additional developers to execute my vision." I exchanged a glance with Eric, recognizing the familiar defensiveness of a founder too close to his creation. "Liam," I said gently, "what made you approach Reynolds Mitchell specifically? Other firms have deeper pockets." The question seemed to catch him off guard. "Your track record," he said after a moment. "The way you work with founders, not just their technologies. And," he hesitated, "your story." "Our story?" Eric prompted. "How you nearly lost everything because you couldn't communicate effectively. How you rebuilt something stronger afterward." Liam looked down at his plate. "It resonated with me because I was encouraged." Liam sighed. "Because I've alienated 2 development teams already. I know I'm difficult to work with, but I can't seem to translate what's in my head to other people effectively." Eric leaned forward. "What if the issue isn't your communication style, but trying to do everything yourself? What if you need a true partner, not just employees?" Liam's expression turned skeptical. "Finding a technical co-founder at this stage would mean giving up significant equity." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but consider the alternative. A brilliant concept that never reaches its potential because one person can't possibly execute all aspects equally well." Eric added, "We struggled with the same challenges. I was the visionary with big ideas. Alex was the pragmatist who made them implementable. Neither of us could have built Cloud Secure alone." "Even when we thought we could," I added meaningfully, catching Eric's eye. Liam considered this, his keen intelligence processing the implications. "You have someone specific in mind." It wasn't a question. "Maya Reyes," I confirmed. "Former security lead at tech giant, recently departed to pursue independent projects. Exceptional implementation skills, strong client relationship background." "And she'd be interested in joining an early-stage startup?" Liam asked, skepticism evident. "She'd be interested in the right opportunity," Eric clarified. "With the right founder." 2 days later, we facilitated an initial meeting between Liam and Maya. The chemistry was immediately apparent, her methodical approach complementing his visionary thinking, her patient questioning drawing out his best ideas. By meeting's end, they huddled over diagrams, finishing each other's sentences. "Remind you of anyone?" Eric murmured as we observed from across the room. I smiled, remembering our own early days. Let's hope they learn the partnership lessons faster than we did. 3 months later, Maya and Liam's revamped company, now called Quantum Shield, secured their Series A funding with an impressive valuation. Their presentation to investors showcased both Liam's groundbreaking architecture and Maya's pragmatic implementation roadmap, each founder deferring to the other's expertise at appropriate moments. At the celebration afterward, Maya sought me out. "Thank you for the introduction," she said sincerely. "Working with Liam has been challenging but incredibly rewarding." "The best partnerships often are," I acknowledged. "The friction creates necessary heat for growth." "He told me about your history with Eric," she continued. "How close you came to destroying everything you'd built together." I glanced across the room where Eric was deep in conversation with Liam. "It's not a chapter we're proud of, but it's shaped everything that came after." "It's actually reassuring," Maya admitted, "knowing that even successful partnerships face breaking points. It makes our everyday disagreements seem manageable by comparison." Later, as Eric and I walked back to our office, I shared Maya's comment with him. "Our cautionary tale has become an inspiration," he noted with a hint of irony. "Not quite how I imagined our legacy." Legacy is rarely what we envision, I replied. But if our mistakes help others navigate their own challenges, that's something worthwhile. A comfortable silence fell between us as we continued walking through the crisp autumn evening, Seattle's lights glimmering against the darkening sky. I had lunch with Carson last week, Eric said suddenly. He's considering an advisory role with one of our portfolio companies. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Eric's relationship with his cousin had improved over the years, but remained complicated. How did that go? Better than expected. He's different now, less focused on appearances, more interested in impact. Eric paused. He asked about you, actually, said he's been following our progress. And what did you tell him? That I wouldn't be where I am without you. That partnership, when it works, is the most valuable asset in business. I smiled, touched by his candor. Look at you, dispensing wisdom like a seasoned venture capitalist. I've had good teachers, he replied with a meaningful glance, including failure. 3 years after launching Reynolds Mitchell Ventures, we faced a pivotal decision. Our success has generated opportunities to expand beyond our initial focus on security startups. Health tech ventures, sustainable energy innovations, and AI applications all presented compelling investment possibilities. The question before us was whether to maintain our specialized approach or broaden our scope to become a more comprehensive venture firm. Growth for growth's sake is a trap, Sarah cautioned during our strategy retreat at a lakeside cabin outside Seattle. Many firms lose their edge when they expand beyond their core expertise. But limiting ourselves to security might mean missing transformative opportunities, Eric countered, gesturing to the portfolio of potential investments spread across the rustic dining table. I studied both perspectives, appreciating the tension between them. What if we approach this differently? Instead of expanding our direct investments, what if we created a network of specialized funds, each with its own focus area? Eric and Sarah looked intrigued. Reynolds Mitchell would remain the flagship. Security fund, I continued, leveraging our deepest expertise. But we could establish affiliated funds with carefully selected partners who bring domain-specific knowledge to other sectors. A federation rather than an empire, Sarah mused, warming to the concept. We'd maintain quality control and shared values across all funds, Eric added, while acknowledging that true expertise is specialized. By the retreat's end, we had outlined a new vision for our venture approach, one that allowed for growth without sacrificing the specialized insight that had defined our success. Implementing this vision would require identifying the right partners. For each new fund, individuals who shared our collaborative philosophy while bringing their own unique strengths. Our first expansion came through Jennifer Davis, our original contact at Tech Giant, who had recently departed to pursue independent opportunities. Her expertise in AI ethics made her the perfect leader for an affiliated fund focused on responsible artificial intelligence development. The Reynolds Mitchell model is exactly what I've been looking for, she told us over dinner as we finalize the details. True partnership, not just a hierarchy with fancy titles. We learned the hard way that titles matter less than transparent communication and genuine respect, Eric acknowledged. Jennifer glanced between us. You know, when I watched you walk into that Tech Giant meeting years ago, Alex, I would never have predicted this outcome. The tension between you two was palpable. Transformation rarely follows a predictable path, I replied. Sometimes the deepest ruptures create space for the most meaningful growth. As Reynolds Mitchell expanded into its federation model, our reputation for nurturing balanced partnerships spread throughout the industry. Founders sought us out not just for funding, but for guidance on navigating the complex relationships at the heart of entrepreneurship. We began hosting quarterly workshops on partnership dynamics in startups, sharing both research-based insights and our own hard-earned wisdom. These sessions became unexpectedly popular, drawing participants from across the technology ecosystem. Have you considered writing a book? Sarah suggested after one particularly successful workshop. Your journey from partnership breakdown to reconstruction contains lessons many could benefit from. Eric looked skeptical. Who would want to read about our mistakes? Everyone who's ever struggled with a business relationship, Sarah countered, which is essentially every entrepreneur who's ever had a co-founder. The idea percolated over the following months, eventually taking shape as a joint project between us. Unlike typical business books with their neat prescriptions and oversimplified frameworks, ours would embrace the messy reality of human relationships in business contexts. We should include Liam and Maya's perspective, I suggested as we outlined the content, and other partnerships we've mentored, show different models that work, not just our specific journey. Eric nodded. And we should be brutally honest about the breakdown, my jealousy, the betrayal, the text message. He winced slightly at the memory. I don't need you anymore. 5 words that nearly destroyed 12 years of partnership. And the recovery, I added. How Monday's meeting changed everything by forcing us to confront the issues directly. That phrase has become shorthand between us for the entire episode, Eric noted. Monday's meeting. The pivot point that could have ended everything but instead began something new. 6 months later, Partners, Building Relationships That Endure Business Challenges was published to unexpected acclaim. The book's unflinching honesty about partnership failures and recoveries resonated with readers far beyond the startup world, generating conversations in fields from healthcare to education. We found ourselves invited to speak at conferences and corporate retreats, sharing our framework for resilient partnerships with audiences eager for authentic guidance rather than platitudes. Did you ever imagine, Eric asked as we waited backstage before a major technology conference keynote, that our worst moment would become our greatest contribution? I considered the question. I think that's often how wisdom works. It's forged in failure, tempered by humility, and shared through vulnerability. Eric straightened my tie, a gesture of casual intimacy that would have been unimaginable during the darkest days of our rift. Well, partner, ready to tell our story again? I nodded, smiling at the journey that had brought us here. Always. As we stepped onto the stage together, I reflected on the mysterious alchemy that transforms broken trust into deeper connection, competitive tension into collaborative strength, and near disaster into meaningful purpose. 5 years earlier, a text message had shattered my world. I don't need you anymore. Words meant to sever, to dismiss, to end. Yet here we stood, bound by something stronger than before. A partnership tested by fire, a friendship deepened by forgiveness, a shared mission born from the ashes of ambition gone awry. Monday's meeting had indeed changed everything, not by erasing the rupture, but by creating space for something new to emerge from the broken pieces. The lights dimmed, the audience hushed, and we began our story once more. Not as a cautionary tale of what to avoid, but as a testament to what can be rebuilt when we choose connection over separation, growth over grievance, and partnership over pride. 10 years. After that fateful Monday meeting, Reynolds Mitchell Ventures had evolved into a federation of 7 specialized funds, each with its own focus area, but united by our core philosophy of balanced partnership. Our original security-focused fund, still personally managed by Eric and me with Sarah's guidance, remained the flagship, but our affiliated funds in AI ethics, health tech, sustainable energy, and other sectors had established their own impressive track records. The Seattle skyline had changed dramatically in the decade since our tech giant days, with new towers reshaping the horizon. Our offices now occupied the 23rd floor of one such building, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city we'd called home since our college days. Final review for the Westlake investment, Sarah announced, striding into my office with a tablet in hand. At 62, she remained as sharp and dedicated as when we'd first partnered, though she'd scaled back her day-to-day involvement to focus on strategic initiatives. Eric joined us moments later, closing the door behind him. "Sorry I'm late." The mentoring session with Quantum Shield's new board members ran long. Quantum Shield, Liam and Maya's venture, had grown from promising startup to industry leader, recently completing a successful IPO that ranked among our portfolio's most impressive exits. They'd remained in Seattle, maintaining close ties with Reynolds Mitchell as they navigated the challenges of public company leadership. "How are they adjusting?" I asked. "Better than we did," Eric replied with a wry smile. "They actually listen, to advice instead of learning everything the hard way." Sarah cleared her throat meaningfully. "The Westlake proposal? We turned our attention to the investment under consideration, a comprehensive cybersecurity framework for autonomous transportation systems. The technology was promising, the market potential enormous, but something about the founding team's dynamic had raised concerns during our initial meetings. Their technical approach is innovative," Eric acknowledged, "but did you notice the tension between the founders during the presentation?" Elena kept interrupting Miguel, and he seemed to be withholding information. "I caught that too," I agreed. "Their body language suggested unresolved conflict." Sarah nodded. "Their complementary expertise makes them potentially strong co-founders, but they lack the communication framework to leverage their differences effectively." "Sounds familiar," Eric murmured, exchanging a knowing glance with me. Over the years, we'd developed an almost sixth sense for detecting partnership dysfunction. The subtle signs of misalignment, resentment, or domination that often preceded more visible ruptures. This awareness has become as important to our investment decisions as technological evaluation or market analysis. "Options?" Sarah prompted. "We could pass," Eric suggested. "Plenty of other opportunities in the pipeline. Or we could address the issue directly," I countered. "Offer conditional investment contingent on partnership counseling." We'd pioneered this approach years earlier after realizing that many promising ventures failed not because of market conditions or technical flaws, but because founding partnerships imploded under pressure. Our partnership development program had emerged as a unique offering within the venture capital landscape, a structured approach to strengthening the human foundations that supported technological innovation. "They might resist," Sarah noted. "Founders often deny relationship problems until crisis hits." "Then we make it clear this isn't punitive but preventative," I suggested. "Share our own story if necessary." Eric nodded his agreement. "The technology's too promising to walk away without trying, and Elena and Miguel remind me of us in some ways, brilliant in their respective domains but struggling to synthesize their perspectives." Decision made, we moved through the remaining agenda items with practiced efficiency. After a decade of refined collaboration, our meetings had developed a natural rhythm, focused but flexible, decisive yet open to reconsideration when new information emerged. As Sarah departed for another appointment, Eric lingered, gazing out at the Seattle skyline with a contemplative expression. "Something on your mind?" I prompted. He turned, a half-smile playing at his lips. "Just thinking about time. Carson's retiring next month." Carson Mitchell, Eric's once-envied cousin whose success had sparked the crisis in our partnership, had maintained a loose affiliation with Reynolds Mitchell over the years, occasionally advising portfolio companies and joining our annual retreat as a guest speaker. "Retiring to where?" I asked. "Somehow I can't picture Carson puttering around a garden." Eric laughed. "New Zealand, apparently. He's bought some ridiculous amount of acreage and plans to reconnect with nature while consulting, remotely for select clients." "Good for him," I said sincerely. "He's earned it." "He invited us to the farewell gathering next week," Eric added, his expression turning thoughtful. "It's strange to think how much his success once consumed me, how it warped my perspective so completely. I studied my longtime partner, appreciating the self-awareness that had developed in him over our journey together. Envy is a powerful, distorting lens. It nearly cost me everything that mattered, he acknowledged quietly. Before I could respond, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Reynolds, your 3 o'clock has arrived. The Health Matrix founders are in the main conference room. We should finish this conversation later, Eric suggested. Dinner at Cascadia? Marina's joining if that works for you. Marina Chen had entered my life 6 years earlier at a technology conference in Vancouver. A brilliant neuroscientist turned medical device entrepreneur, she'd challenged my presentation on security protocols for health data with such incisive questions that I'd sought her out afterward to continue the discussion. That initial professional respect had evolved into a deep personal connection, culminating in our marriage 3 years ago. Perfect, I agreed. Emily's flying in from Stanford this afternoon, so she'll join us too. Eric's daughter Emily had just started her sophomore year studying computer science, following in her father's footsteps while blazing her own trail. She'd spent the summer interning at one of our portfolio companies, displaying both her father's visionary thinking and a diplomatic touch that had made her surprisingly effective at bridging departmental divides. Later that evening, as the 4 of us enjoyed dinner at Cascadia, Seattle's lights twinkled beyond the restaurant's windows. The conversation flowed easily from Emily's studies to Marina's latest research project, to updates on mutual friends. Dad's been waxing philosophical about the past again, Emily teased, nudging her father affectionately. Mom says it's a sign of old age, Eric laughed. 48 is hardly ancient, thank you very much. It's the anniversary effect, I explained to Marina and Emily. We're approaching 10 years since Reynolds Mitchell was founded. And 12 since the infamous Monday meeting, Eric added with a meaningful glance at me. Marina squeezed my hand, under the table. She knew our story well, the betrayal, the confrontation, the difficult reconstruction of trust. I'd shared it with her early in our relationship, wanting her to understand the experiences that had shaped me. Have you thought about how you want to mark the anniversary? She asked. Eric and I exchanged glances. We hadn't discussed it specifically, but the milestone had been hovering at the edges of our awareness. Actually, Eric began, I've been considering something. A new initiative beyond our existing funds. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What did you have in mind? An educational foundation, he explained, leaning forward with the familiar intensity that signaled a vision taking shape. Focused on partnership dynamics across disciplines. Business, yes, but also science, healthcare, education, public service. The Reynolds Mitchell Foundation for Collaborative Leadership, I suggested, immediately grasping the potential. Something like that, he agreed. We've accumulated so much knowledge about what makes partnerships work or fail, not just from our experience, but from a decade of observing hundreds of founding teams. It seems wasteful not to share that more broadly. Emily looked between us, with evident amusement. And this is why your partnership works. Dad throws out a half-formed idea, and instead of critiquing it, you immediately build on it and make it better. Marina nodded her agreement. It's like watching a well-choreographed dance where neither person leads all the time, Eric grinned. It wasn't always like this. We had to learn the hard way. Very hard, I agreed. But the foundation idea has merit. Beyond venture-backed startups, there are countless contexts where partnership dynamics determine outcomes, from research laboratories to nonprofit organizations. By dessert, the concept had evolved substantially. The foundation would fund research on effective collaboration, develop educational curricula for various sectors, and create fellowship programs to support emerging leadership pairs showing promise. But needing development, we should bring this to Sarah tomorrow, Eric suggested as we concluded the evening. Get her perspective before we go too far down the planning road. Agreed, I replied. Foundation governance needs to reflect our partnership principles from the start. The following morning, Sarah received our foundation concept with characteristic thoughtfulness, asking probing questions that helped refine the vision further. "This could be your most significant legacy," she observed after we'd addressed her initial concerns. "Beyond the financial returns, beyond the companies you've helped build." "Our legacy," Eric corrected. "This wouldn't exist without both of you." In the weeks that followed, the foundation concept rapidly took shape. We engaged legal and philanthropic advisors, established preliminary governance structures, and began identifying potential board members who embodied the collaborative leadership principles we sought to promote. Meanwhile, our regular business continued. We advanced the conditional investment in Elena and Miguel's autonomous transportation security venture, with both founders somewhat reluctantly agreeing to participate in our partnership development program. "They remind me so much of us," Eric commented after their third session. "Brilliant individually, but initially resistant to the vulnerability required for true collaboration." "Are they making progress?" I asked. "Slowly. Miguel's starting to articulate his reservations instead of passive-aggressive withholding. Elena's learning to create space for his perspective instead of steamrolling." "Baby steps," I observed. "That's how it happens," he agreed. "No overnight transformations, just gradual shifts that compound over time." As planning for the foundation advanced, we decided to mark its launch with a summit on collaborative leadership, bringing together pairs of leaders from various sectors who exemplified successful partnership. The event would coincide with the 10th anniversary of Reynolds Mitchell Ventures, creating a meaningful bridge between our past and future contributions. The summit venue, a recently renovated historic building in downtown Seattle, was abuzz with activity as final preparations unfolded. Delegates from technology, healthcare, education, government, and nonprofit sectors gathered in animated clusters, sharing experiences across traditional boundaries. In a quiet moment before the opening session, Eric and I stood in the empty auditorium, surveying the stage where we would soon share our story once more. "Did you ever imagine when you stormed into that conference room 12 years ago that it would lead to this?" Eric asked. I shook my head, still sometimes amazed by the trajectory our lives had taken. "I was just trying to save our company. I had no vision beyond that moment." "I was terrified when I saw you walk in," he admitted, "convinced everything was about to collapse." "It did collapse," I reminded him, "but not in the way either of us expected." Eric nodded thoughtfully. "The collapse created space for something stronger to be built." As attendees began filing into the auditorium, Sarah joined us backstage, elegant in a tailored suit that reflected her status as our partnership's elder statesperson. "Ready to inspire some transformations?" she asked with a smile. "As ready as we'll ever be," I replied, echoing words I'd spoken on our first day at Tech Giant a decade earlier. The lights dimmed, the customary hush fell over the audience, and the event moderator, a respected journalist known for her insightful interviews, took the stage to welcome participants and frame the summit's purpose. "Leadership is traditionally depicted as a solitary endeavor," she began. "Our cultural narratives celebrate the individual visionary, the lone genius, the singular hero. But the most significant advances in human history, from scientific breakthroughs to organizational transformations, often emerge not from solitary brilliance, but from dynamic partnerships where diverse perspectives catalyze innovation through productive tension." She paused, surveying the audience. "No one understands this truth more profoundly than our opening speakers. Their journey from partnership breakdown to collaborative renaissance not only transformed their own venture, but has since influenced hundreds of founding teams and leadership pairs across multiple sectors." She gestured toward the wings. "Please, welcome Alex Reynolds and Eric Mitchell, co-founders of Reynolds Mitchell Ventures and architects of the new Foundation for Collaborative Leadership." As we walked onto the stage together, greeted by warm applause, I felt a moment of profound gratitude for the crisis that had revealed what truly mattered, for the difficult journey of rebuilding, and for the wisdom that had emerged from our failures as much as our successes. The spotlight brightened as we took our seats, and the moderator opened with the question that had framed our story for more than a decade. 12 years ago, Eric, you sent Alex a text message saying, "I don't need you anymore," and locked him out of your shared company. Monday's meeting changed everything. Tell us about that pivotal day. Eric glanced at me, a lifetime of shared history passing between us. In that brief exchange, "It began with betrayal," he acknowledged, his voice steady. "And it could have ended there, another partnership dissolved by ego, ambition, and poor communication. But it didn't," I continued, picking up the narrative thread with the practiced ease of longtime collaborators. "Instead, that Monday meeting became the foundation for everything we've built since, not despite the rupture, but because of it. Because once something breaks completely, you can see all its component parts, understand its vulnerabilities, and rebuild it with intention." As we shared our story once more, I observed the audience's response. The nods of recognition, the exchanged glances between co-leaders, the subtle shifts that suggested internal reflection. Our journey from broken trust to deepened partnership clearly resonated beyond the specifics of our situation, touching universal themes of human connection, growth through adversity, and the transformative power of genuine collaboration. When the formal session concluded, participants approached us with their own stories, of partnerships rescued from the brink of collapse, of collaborations that had transformed their organizations, of the daily practice required to maintain creative tension without destructive conflict. "Your foundation's work is desperately needed," a hospital administrator told us, her clinical research partner nodding in agreement beside her. "We stumbled through our partnership challenges without a roadmap. Others shouldn't have to." As the day progressed through breakout sessions and panel discussions, I found myself continuously grateful for the journey that had brought us here. The text message that had once shattered my world, "I don't need you anymore," had ultimately revealed a profound truth. We needed each other, not just for business success, but for the growth that comes from engaging authentically with perspectives different from our own. That evening, the summit concluded with a reception overlooking Elliott Bay, the same waters we'd gazed upon as college students dreaming of changing the world through technology. Now, with gray beginning to touch our temples and wisdom lines framing our eyes, we had indeed changed a small corner of that world, not precisely as we'd imagined, but perhaps more meaningfully. As Marina joined me at the railing, slipping her hand into mine, I felt a sense of completion that transcended professional accomplishment. The journey from betrayal to reconciliation, from broken trust to deepened partnership, had not only transformed our business relationship, but had shaped us as individuals, more patient, more humble, more appreciative of the complex interplay between independence and interconnection. "Happy?" Marina asked softly, reading my expression. "Grateful," I corrected. "For all of it, even the painful parts." Across the terrace, I watched Eric deep in conversation with Liam and Maya, whose successful partnership owed much to the lessons of our difficult journey. Sarah was surrounded by a cluster of Foundation board members, her hands animated as she outlined a vision for the future. All around us, summit participants continued sharing insights and building connections that would extend the ripples of our experience far beyond what we could directly influence. Monday's meeting had indeed changed everything, not by erasing the pain of betrayal, but by creating space for a redemption story neither of us could have authored alone. From the ruins of what we'd broken had emerged something neither of us had imagined building, a testament to the possibility of transformation when we choose growth over grievance, collaboration over competition, and partnership over pride. The Seattle lights twinkled to life against the darkening sky, I allowed myself to fully appreciate the journey, with all its unexpected turns, painful lessons, and profound gifts. The text message that once signaled rejection, "I don't need you anymore," had ultimately opened the door to our most significant discovery: that true partnership flourishes not from mutual dependency or independence, but from the conscious choice to create something greater together than either could build alone. The foundation for collaborative leadership's inaugural year exceeded even our most optimistic projections. Applications for our fellowship program, which paired promising leaders from diverse sectors, outnumbered available slots by 20 to 1. Our research initiatives attracted top academic talent eager to study partnership dynamics through a multidisciplinary lens. And requests for our partnership assessment tool came from organizations ranging from global corporations to local nonprofit collectives. 18 months after the summit, I found myself in an unfamiliar setting: the Oval Office. The President's administration had taken notice of our work and invited us to discuss applying our collaborative leadership framework to government interagency coordination. "The siloing of expertise has become a national security vulnerability," the Chief of Staff explained as Eric, Sarah, and I were ushered through the White House's stately corridors. "We have brilliant people who can't effectively work across departmental boundaries." The President greeted us warmly, immediately dispensing with formalities. "I've read your book twice," she told us, gesturing toward the chairs arranged in a conversational circle rather than across her imposing desk. "Your insights on productive tension resonated deeply with me." "We're honored by your interest," Sarah replied, though we never imagined our work would find application at this level of governance. "The principles of effective partnership transcend context," the President observed. "Whether it's two founders launching a startup or cabinet secretaries coordinating national policy, the human dynamics remain remarkably consistent." The 2-hour meeting that followed was among the most intellectually stimulating of my career. The President and her team asked incisive questions about our methodology, challenged our assumptions with real-world governance scenarios, and shared candid examples of interagency collaboration breakdowns that had hampered policy implementation. "We'd like to create a pilot program," the President concluded, "adapting your partnership development framework to address our most pressing interagency coordination challenges." As we departed the White House, walking through the autumn sunshine toward our waiting car, Eric shook his head in quiet amazement. From being locked out of our own company to advising the President, life takes unexpected turns. "The best insights often emerge from the deepest struggles," Sarah noted. "Your personal crisis created expertise that now serves a wider purpose." Back in Seattle, we assembled a specialized team to adapt our methods for government application, recruiting former public servants with first-hand experience navigating bureaucratic divisions. The resulting Government Collaborative Leadership Initiative became a cornerstone of the Foundation's work, eventually expanding to include state and local governance structures. Meanwhile, Reynolds Mitchell Ventures continued flourishing under our evolving leadership model. As we approached our 12th anniversary, we had begun implementing a carefully designed succession plan, not to remove ourselves entirely, but to create space for emerging leaders within our organization while maintaining our founding partnerships. Guiding presence. Zoe Miller had joined our leadership council after Quantum Shield's successful exit, bringing her technical brilliance and the wisdom gained from her own partnership journey with Liam. Jennifer Davis, who had led our AI ethics fund with distinction, now oversaw our entire federation of specialized funds, and several promising leaders from within our organization had been elevated to positions of increasing responsibility. "We're creating a perpetual institution," Eric observed during our quarterly strategy retreat, held at a secluded lodge on Washington's Olympic Peninsula, "one that can outlast any individual founder." "That was always the goal," I reminded him. to build something larger than ourselves. Sarah, who had scaled back to an advisory role but remained our philosophical compass, nodded approvingly. The true test of leadership is what happens when you're not in the room. You've built systems that embody your partnership principles without requiring your constant presence. The retreat's agenda included a thorough review of our portfolio performance, strategic planning for the Foundation's next initiatives, and finalizing our succession framework. But perhaps most meaningful was the evening session where we shared personal reflections on our journey, not just the professional milestones but the human growth that had accompanied them. I was thinking recently about identities, Eric mused as we gathered around the lodge's massive stone fireplace, Pacific Northwest rain pattering gently against the windows. Who I was when we started Cloud Secure, who I became during the crisis, and who I've evolved into since. What prompted that reflection? Jennifer asked, curled in an armchair with a glass of wine. Eric smiled ruefully. Carson's memoir, actually. He sent me an advance copy. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. Eric's cousin, now happily ensconced in his New Zealand property, had apparently been documenting his own journey from aggressive entrepreneur to contemplative elder statesman. He devotes a chapter to our story, Eric continued, his perspective as an outside observer of our partnership breakdown and reconstruction. It made me see myself through different eyes. And, Sarah prompted, and I realized how thoroughly my identity had been wrapped up in external metrics of success. Money, status, recognition. These weren't just things I wanted. They were how I defined myself. Eric's expression turned contemplative as he watched the dancing flames. When those markers seemed threatened or when others, like Carson, achieved them faster, my sense of self unraveled. Which led to that text message, I added softly. I don't need you anymore. The ultimate statement of separation. Eric nodded. I was trying to salvage my threatened identity by eliminating what I perceived as the obstacle. Your caution, your insistence on doing things the right way rather than the expedient way. But that's what made us successful, Zoe observed. The balance between vision and implementation. Exactly, Eric agreed. What I saw as an obstacle was actually essential to our success. I just couldn't recognize it through the distorted lens of insecurity. Jennifer leaned forward, clearly engaged. So, what changed? How did you move from that identity to who you are now? Eric glanced at me, a lifetime of shared history passing between us. Monday's meeting was the catalyst. When Alex confronted me directly, it shattered the narrative I'd constructed to justify my actions. But the real transformation happened gradually, through the daily practice of rebuilding trust and the concrete evidence that our partnership, when properly balanced, created something greater than either of us could achieve alone. The evidence became undeniable, I added. With each successful client project at Tech Giant, with each portfolio company at Reynolds Mitchell, we accumulated proof that our complementary perspectives strengthened rather than hindered our work. Identity follows evidence, Sarah summarized, thoughtfully. When the evidence consistently contradicts your self-concept, eventually that self-concept must evolve. The conversation continued late into the evening, each person sharing insights from their own partnership experiences. Jennifer's initial struggles with her co-director at the AI Ethics Fund, Zoe's communication breakthroughs with Liam, even Sarah's reflection on how her role as our third partner had evolved over time. As the gathering eventually dispersed toward individual cabins, Eric lingered behind with me, both of us watching the embers of the once roaring fire gradually fade to glowing coals. Carson got one thing wrong in his memoir, he said after a comfortable silence. What's that? He portrayed our reconciliation as a business decision, calculated risk management on both our parts. I smiled, understanding his objection. Because he filtered it through his own lens at that time. He couldn't see beyond strategic considerations to the human element. Exactly, Eric nodded. He missed that the reconstruction of our partnership, wasn't just about salvaging Cloud Secure or maximizing our tech giant earnout. It was about something more fundamental, recognizing that some relationships are worth the difficult work of rebuilding, not because of financial calculations, but because of who we become through that process. In the years that followed, the Foundation for Collaborative Leadership expanded its reach globally. We established offices in Singapore, London, and Nairobi, each adapting our partnership development framework to local cultural contexts while maintaining the core principles that had emerged from our own experience. The Government Collaborative Leadership Initiative evolved into an international program, with 15 countries implementing variations of our approach to enhance cross-agency coordination. Our educational curricula became standard components of business school leadership programs, medical training, and public policy education. On a personal level, Marina and I welcomed a milestone when her medical device company, which had developed a groundbreaking neural interface for prosthetic limbs, received FDA approval after years of rigorous testing. The technology she had pioneered promised life-changing improvements for thousands of amputees, translating neural signals with unprecedented accuracy to create more natural movement patterns. We should consider a Reynolds-Mitchell investment, Eric suggested when I shared the news, his enthusiasm genuine. This has enormous potential, I laughed. Careful with your nepotism, partner. Marina would want any investment to stand on the technology's merits alone. Which it absolutely does, he insisted. Jennifer's health tech fund would be the perfect fit. Marina's neural interface combined with Quantum Shield's security protocols could revolutionize medical device safety. The suggestion led to a carefully managed investment process with appropriate recusals and independent evaluations to maintain our firm's integrity. When the investment was finalized 6 months later, it marked the beginning of a productive collaboration between Marina's company and several Reynolds-Mitchell portfolio ventures, each contributing specialized expertise to enhance the neural interface's capabilities. Emily, now completing her graduate studies, occasionally teased her father about his evolution from ruthless entrepreneur to collaborative leadership evangelist. Dad used to practice his power stance before meetings, she revealed during a family dinner at our home. He thought it made him more intimidating. Eric groaned good-naturedly. Must you share every embarrassing detail of my former self? Only the instructive ones, Emily replied with a grin. Your father's transformation has been remarkable, I acknowledged. From power stances to partnership workshops, quite the journey. It wasn't a straight line, Eric admitted, his expression turning reflective. There were plenty of backslides and moments of doubt, especially in those early days at Tech Giant. Marina, ever the scientist, commented, neural pathways don't rewire. Overnight, new behaviors require consistent reinforcement until they become the default response. Exactly, Eric agreed. The partnership principles we teach now through the foundation, those weren't theoretical constructs we developed and then implemented. They emerged from our daily practice of rebuilding trust, managing conflict productively, and leveraging our differences as strengths rather than obstacles. As Reynolds-Mitchell Ventures approached its 15th anniversary, we began planning a comprehensive impact assessment, not just examining financial returns, though those had been impressive, but evaluating the broader effects of our partnership-centered approach on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. The research team we assembled discovered compelling patterns across our portfolio companies. Ventures with balanced founding partnerships demonstrated greater resilience during market downturns, more successful pivots when initial strategies faltered, and higher rates of employee satisfaction and retention. They were also more likely to prioritize ethical considerations in product development and business practices. The data confirms what we've observed anecdotally, Sarah noted during the presentation of preliminary findings. Effective partnerships create not just financial value but broader societal benefits through more responsible innovation approaches. The impact assessment culminated in a white paper that gained significant attention across the venture capital landscape. prompting several prominent firms to re-examine their approach to founding team dynamics and investment criteria. "You've shifted the paradigm," Jennifer told us during a leadership council meeting. "When you started Reynolds Mitchell, most VCs evaluated founding teams primarily on technical credentials and domain expertise. Now, balanced partnership dynamics are a standard component of due diligence." This evolution in the broader venture ecosystem represented perhaps our most meaningful legacy, not just the specific companies we'd helped build or the financial returns we'd generated, but the fundamental shift in how entrepreneurial partnerships were understood, evaluated, and developed. One crisp autumn evening, 16 years after that pivotal Monday meeting, Eric and I found ourselves back at the Seattle waterfront, where we'd once celebrated CloudSecure's first major client with cheap champagne on my rooftop. The area had transformed dramatically, sleek high-rises replacing many of the older buildings, upscale restaurants occupying former warehouses, yet the essential character remained, the interplay of urban energy and maritime tranquility that had defined Seattle throughout our journey. "Remember when we thought success meant an IPO and fancy offices?" Eric mused as we walked along the redeveloped pier, now an inviting public space with art installations and seating areas overlooking the water. "We had such a limited vision," I acknowledged. "Success measured in dollars and headlines." "And now?" I considered the question, watching a ferry glide across the bay toward Bainbridge Island, its lights bright against the darkening water. "Now I think success is about the impact that outlasts us, the partnerships we've strengthened, the leadership approaches we've transformed, the institutional knowledge we've created." Eric nodded thoughtfully. "Carson asked me something interesting when he visited last month. He wanted to know if I'd do it all again. The betrayal, the text message, the confrontation, knowing where it would lead." "And what did you tell him?" "That's the wrong question," Eric replied, "because that crisis wasn't the beginning of our journey, but a pivotal moment within it. The foundation that allowed us to rebuild was laid in the 12 years before, the trust we'd established, the shared history, the complementary strengths we'd demonstrated countless times. Monday's meeting didn't create something new," I realized aloud. It revealed what had always been true, but had become obscured by ambition and insecurity. "Exactly," Eric agreed. "It burned away the accumulated distortions and brought us back to fundamentals, that we were always stronger together than apart." As we completed our waterfront walk and headed toward the restaurant where we were meeting Marina and Sarah for dinner, I reflected on the mysterious alchemy that transforms crisis into opportunity, conflict into deeper understanding, and broken trust into more authentic connection. The text message that had once shattered my world, "I don't need you anymore," had ultimately revealed its opposite truth. That genuine partnership isn't about dependence or independence, but about chosen interdependence, a voluntary commitment to create something beyond individual capacity through the dynamic tension of diverse perspectives. Monday's meeting had indeed changed everything, not by erasing what came before, but by creating space for what could emerge. After, a phoenix partnership rising from the ashes of ego-driven ambition to create a legacy neither of us could have envisioned alone. The Seattle skyline glittered against the evening sky, a fitting backdrop to a journey that had unfolded in this city from dorm room dreams to global impact. Whatever challenges lay ahead, for our ventures, our foundation, or our partnership, we would face them with the hard-won wisdom that only emerges from breaking and rebuilding, from failing and recovering, from losing and finding one's way, back to what truly matters. The restaurant door opened before us, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk as Marina waved from a corner table where Sarah was already seated. Eric paused briefly, his expression reflecting the same gratitude I felt for this unexpected chapter of our story. "Ready for whatever comes next?" he asked, echoing our long-time refrain. I smiled, stepping forward into the light. "Always." "Looking for more?" We've got two amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.